This is the new Range Rover Evoque. It looks like a miniature Velar, which is a good thing in my book. And now let's take it for a drive. This is the second time I get to drive this very car. A couple of months ago I was at a brief Polish press launch event, but there was no time or weather to film. So I just made a list of first impressions, which I shall now confront, having spent more time with the Evoque. At the beginning, I found it difficult to get myself comfortable in the Evoque. Range Rover Evoque is one of those cars where the headrest is tilted front too much and there is no way to adjust it. So I spent some time, playing with the seat settings and with the steering wheel settings, and finally I found a very comfortable driving position, which I instantly stored so as not to lose it. And after spending many hours driving this car on the road, on the driver's seat and in the passenger seat, I think these seats are very comfortable. Bear in mind, these are the optional seats with 16-way adjustment. The steering wheel is huge, at least it looks large. For comparison, I measured a somewhat chunkier Lexus RC steering wheel. Evoque's steering wheel has only 2 centimeters bigger diameter, but it looks much larger. This test car has the optional heating, which is always nice, but I don't like the aluminium halo, which may look interesting, but is also very cold. There is a lot of piano black throughout the cockpit, so you're going to be leaving a lot of fingerprints, and in due time all this thing is going to get scratched. However, inside the Evoque, you feel that this car is premium. You may call this the baby Range Rover, but there is nothing entry-level about the finish, at least compared to the competition. We'll get to the competition later, by the way. The glove box is average size, and so is storage under the armrest. Also, the armrest slams on the USB cable if you want to have the phone outside. I know the driver shouldn't, but passengers may want to play with their phones. By the way, USB ports in the back are a part of an optional power base pack, which hasn't been specified in this car. I like Range Rover's new infotainment system, which debuted in the Velar. I'll tell you later how it works, but now briefly about the stuff that doesn't work, and that's Android Auto and sometimes Bluetooth or Bluetooth streaming. It just crashes, and it came back after I restarted the car, but it happens once in a while. The first time I drove the Evoque, I had the feeling the 249 horsepower motor is somewhat muffled. Now I know the good stuff is in the middle of the rev band. There is no point revving the engine high, but there is also little happening down low. It's better to let the gearbox kick down. This, unfortunately, may be jerky. Perhaps it's got something to do with the mild hybrid system Range Rover now offers. There is little in the press materials about the MHEV except for the fact that it's a 48-volt system and that in most of the cases it should help improve fuel economy, and yeah, that's pretty much it. During normal driving, when you lift off the accelerator, the kinetic energy is recuperated and stored in batteries, which are down here somewhere. And when you press the accelerator, the stored energy is used to improve the car's flexibility, improve the acceleration ever so slightly. It's also used to power the onboard electrical systems when the engine shuts off. Below 17 km per hour, when you gently press the brake, the engine shuts off and uses recuperated energy. Let go of the brake,
and the engine turns back on. The problem is that the engine can shut off just before I need to give it a wheelie, like when rolling to a junction and then taking off. This also happens when the indicator is turned on and the wheels are already turned left or right, so theoretically the system should know I may need to step on it.
The MHEV cuts CO2 emissions by up to 8 grams per kilometer and improves fuel efficiency by up to 6%. It sounds great until you compare it with the first-gen Evoque.
It's worth mentioning the first and second generation Evoques are almost the same size. The length hasn't changed, but the new model is slightly wider and has longer wheelbase. This means there is more room inside. Thanks to the chunky looks, the Evoque always looked to me larger than it really is. I wanted to compare it to BMW X3, but it turns out it's the size of Audi Q3, BMW X1, Jaguar E-Pace, Mercedes-Benz GLA or Volvo XC40. Range Rover is shorter than the lot, but also slightly wider.
And a lot heavier. I suppose it's partly due to the advanced all-wheel drive system, which separates the Evoque from other small SUVs.
If for whatever reason someone would like to take the Evoque off-road, the car will cope, although I would not expect much from Michelin Pilot Sports when the going gets tough. That said, the car coped alright on wet grass.
Never mind the Evoque is heavier than the competition, but the 1800 plus kilogram car is also around 70 kilograms heavier than the model it replaces. It also uses more fuel and emits more CO2 than the Mark I Evoque. According to NEDC, it uses almost 8 liters per 100 kilometers in the combined cycle, and according to WLTP, it uses more than 9 liters per 100 kilometers. That's about 26 US and 31 Imperial MPG. The WLTP result is realistic if one really applies oneself. The steering is generally unobtrusive, the Evoque goes where I point it. However, the steering rack is clearly slower than that in the more sporty road-oriented competitors. I can feel the Evoque is clearly oriented for off-road driving, where the slow rack is more advantageous. So I suggest you do not specify the optional adaptive dampers, which will not make this car particularly more sporty, but they will make a lot of unpleasant thumping noises like adaptive dampers tend to do.
Otherwise, the Evoque is a pleasant, comfortable car to roll around the city and to cover long distances. Soundproofing is surprisingly good for this massive front. Possibly the slanted windscreen helps reduce wind noise. It also helps create a huge blind spot as the A-pillar aligns with the side mirror, just like in the Mazda 3. But unlike in the Mazda 3, rear visibility in the Evoque is excellent.
Maneuvering around town is easy thanks to the 360-degree camera, but that's just one of many available views. My favorite is the transparent bonnet. This will help you avoid curbing those 20-inch alloys, which, by the way, are standard on the R-Dynamic HSE trim. It's a shame it takes ages for the system to load on startup when you start the car, so for a good 20-30 seconds all you get is a reversing camera.
Automatic parking system finds parking spots quickly and parks quickly too, but it leaves too much space on the inside, which you can see in this shot. A human driver would not park a car sticking out like this.
There's also the optional clear side rear view mirror, a display showing you an image from a camera which is mounted on the roof. It's like in the Toyota RAV4 I reviewed recently, and I've got a question for you. How often do you load your car up to the roof so you have to use only the side mirrors, and how often is that a problem? I can't recall when was the last time I loaded my car up to the roof, but I remember driving vans a couple of times and they had only side mirrors, and that was not a problem for me. I think that mirror is something that nobody asked for. Somebody designed it and started pushing it into the cars, but nobody actually needs it. If you do, let me know in the comments below. I'll go back to the infotainment for a minute. I really like it, and it consists of 3 screens. So there are the configurable virtual dials in front of the driver and 2 displays on the center console. The top one is for your general settings, sat-nav, multimedia, phone, stuff like that. And the lower one is for things like settings of the climate, heated ventilated seats, or maybe the car, whether you wanted to put it in automatic mode or some off-road modes, whatever. This is down here. I also like that Range Rover left these physical knobs, and these physical knobs are multifunction, so they can either be used to set the temperature, which is pretty much straightforward. They can be used to set the level with which the air is blowing if this car has manual AC, or if you turn off the automatic climate control. If you go into the car settings and the drivetrain settings, you can use one of these knobs to select the driving mode, which is also pretty cool. And if you go into the heated seats and everything, then the heater or ventilated seat settings come on, and you can then use it to set your hot or cold seats. So that's really brilliant. I really like this infotainment system. It's really easy and intuitive to use. It even gives you the weather. And the only problem is that Bluetooth sometimes crashes, and Android Auto, for whatever reason, I cannot connect. And that's a bit annoying.
In the back there is decent amount of space for 2 passengers, the middle seat is too high and there is a tunnel obstructing foot space. The backrest splits 40-20-40, but because the middle seat is so high, you have to extend the middle headrest. Loading area isn't perfectly flat, but lo and behold, JLR started providing VDA boot space capacity, which is now 1156 liters with the seats folded and 472 liters with the seats up to the window line. Perhaps slightly less if you have the mini spare, which is standard in Poland. There are also shopping bag hooks and elastic tape and a small netted alcove. The button on the tailgate doesn't lock the car. You can also close the tailgate by swinging your foot under the bumper, but like in the Jaguar E-Pace, also here sensors are on the corners. Prices of the Range Rover Evoque starts at €38,000 for a 2-liter front-wheel drive manual 150 horsepower diesel. This is the only manual transmission option. All other versions get a 9-speed automatic and intelligent all-wheel drive. Power ranges from 150 to 300 horsepower. In the future there is also going to be a 3-cylinder petrol plug-in hybrid. This test car is an R-Dynamic HSE trim with 249 horsepower petrol engine. It starts at €51,000 and with options it goes up to around 75 grand.
I like the Evoque because it looks chunky and big. I also like the interior quality, but the price you have to pay for it is steep. You can buy a similarly spec'd BMW X1 or a Volvo XC40 for yourself and a Dacia Duster for your maid. But perhaps this is a part of the brand appeal. You buy a Range Rover because you can, not because you need the largest boot in the segment. And what do you think about the new Evoque? Is it posh enough? Let me know in the comment section below. Subscribe, rate and share. Join me for new reviews every Friday. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.